It is 5 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting of the Belton Independent School District Board of Trustees to order. A quorum of board members is present. We will note that Ms. Janice Lee is out of town today, so she will not be joining us. However, we do have a quorum. This meeting has been duly called, and a notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. Please rise for a moment of silent prayer or meditation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance and honors to the Texas flag. Please join me in Pledge of Allegiance for the U.S. flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state under God, one indivisible. Thank you all. Welcome, welcome, welcome on this pleasant evening. It was such a nice day. The weather was fabulous. We are going to start this meeting with public comments. Mrs. Burns, do we have anyone signed up? Okay, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which will consist of board workshop and committee reports. Mr. Manuel Arcoser will get us started on policy committee reports.
All right. This is our inaugural policy committee report from our inaugural meeting. And by the way, Robin, I think this is a good idea. I know that we're in the infancy of this, but it looks like it's working good. Just in my short experience on this board and being involved with that, because policy is probably it's either the most important or maybe the second most important thing that we do as a board. So thank you for the idea, and I hope that we continue to do that. Mr. Morgan had provided us with a report on the intra and inter-district transfers. Inter-district meaning a kid that comes from, let's say, Killeen, Copperas Cove, anyone outside the district coming in and wanting to transfer. Intra-district meaning a child that wants to transfer from one school to another within the district. The main reason that we started to address these policies was because we didn't have anything in place that addressed it because, first of all, we've been pretty lenient about transferring kids within the district because we didn't have another high school. We just had one high school, didn't have to worry about UIL rules, didn't have to worry about those kinds of things. And now this policy that we've implemented is a policy that will address what has been going on in practice. So what we did in practice, we now put in writing. At least that was the go initially. The first thing that we talked about was the cost of having kids transfer from out of the district. Let's say coming from Killeen, and then coming to Belton, there's a cost for that. And one of the things that we had approved, at least between Dr. Montgomery and Chris Floor and I, and that we can present to the rest of the board, was giving a 50% discount to military families. We talked about what other districts do. Some districts don't charge anything, but instead of charging $1,000, for example, for a high school student, it would cost $500 for a kid coming from a military family to transfer into Belton. So we thought that would be a nice gesture to our military family since we're obviously close to a military town. The other things that we tried to address primarily were employee transfers, overcrowding transfers, or overcrowding issues. We didn't have any criteria for that. And one of the things that I do want to mention, I think I'd be remiss to say that, yes, this is a local policy. It's not a legal policy, a local policy that we pass here. There are going to be extraordinary family circumstances that we would consider. If you have a situation where you have a special needs kid at a certain school and the service is only provided at that school, then that's something that the district would consider on an ad hoc basis. So although we are implementing these rules, they're not they're not necessarily hard, fast rules to apply to everything, although Mr. Morgan has done a fantastic job in trying to address every potential contingency that's out there. And in a perfect world, you can do that, but not necessarily in a policy-making kind of procedure can you address every potential contingency. But the things that we have addressed, I think that are going to cover most cases where we have issues with respect to that. The other consideration that we took into as a big part of making this decision was the situation where you have capacities at certain schools. So if you have a situation where you have kids transfer into a certain school, at one point you're going to have a potential overcrowding issue. Now, we didn't address that in the policy, but I think that's going to be something that's going to be addressed administratively from school to school. For example, one of the numbers we talked about was 96%. So if you have kids that are transferring to, let's say, Sparta Elementary, and that school is at 96%, so all the transfers to that school would simply stop at that point. And I think that you have to do that, obviously, to address the overcrowding issue. So we're going to keep a close eye on that, along with the demographics that were assigned to us or provided to us in terms of whenever we did the boundary issues. The demographic folks gave us numbers that we could follow. So we're going to follow those numbers and stay in tune with that, and then maybe cut it off at 96%. I mean, obviously that could change, but 96% seems to be a good number to follow. Now, with respect to 2020, school year 2020, those things are going to be, there won't be any legacy transfers, there won't be any grandfathering, that kind of thing. These rules that we're putting in place now are designed to address transfers now. And we understand that a lot of this comes from just growing pains. If we didn't have another high school coming in, we wouldn't be addressing these issues now, but we have to address them now so that next year when we get into 2021, when the new school opens, then we'll have less issues with that. And Mr. Morgan, can you talk a little bit about what was the concern with respect to sibling transfers?
Sure. With sibling transfers, this will be something that kind of works its way out within a couple of years. But you have, only having freshmen and sophomores at the new high school, you're going to have families that have a freshman or sophomore who may be zoned to Lake Belton High School, but you have an 11th or 12th grader assigned to Belton High School. And the idea with sibling transfers is you don't want to split families, you don't want to split siblings, and since those siblings, the older siblings do not have an option to go to Lake Belton High School, then they would have the opportunity to transfer. The younger siblings would have the opportunity to go to Belton High School. They don't have to. I mean, you could have a senior at Belton High School and a freshman at Lake Belton High School, but we did want to give families the opportunity to have both siblings at the same campus at the same time.
All right, now the next issue, and it came up a lot during the meetings that we had when we zoned the schools with the new school, and that was the perpetual transfer issue with students in the Hook. Can you address that very briefly?
Yes, the Hook neighborhood is a southern lying neighborhood. It's on the south side of the lake, but currently those kids are zoned to Lakewood Elementary and have been for the last 6 years, I believe, or more. What the final attendance boundaries that were approved in January have those students at Lakewood Elementary from K through 5th grade. However, in 6th grade, they come back across to Belton Middle School. So what we really want to do is work with our demographer and create a plan to get them either on the south side or the north side, but where they don't get split from their peer group. And what makes this group really more extraordinary than most, it's a relatively small number. Some classes as small as 10 or 12 students, some as large as 20 to 24 students. But we're not talking about a big portion of kids. So if you were to split a group of 70 or 80 or 90 kids off, the peer group pretty much remains intact, or at least the neighborhood peer group. These kids are going to elementary school for 6 years, and then there's 8 or 10 or 12 or 15 of them that are being split off to a opposite middle school. So that's the concern with them. We want to be as generous as we can this year, but fix the problem long-term where we don't create a perpetual transfer situation that will come up year after year after year.
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to do a redistricting cleanup going into the 2020 school year. So we're going to look at it two ways: short term, what we have now, make it the best we can, and then do a redistricting cleanup going into the next year.
Wasn't, if I remember correctly from the meetings we had, years ago, those kids went to Sparta, and then eventually they moved north to Lake Belton. And the reason we didn't go ahead and put them in Sparta at the moment was because it was overcrowded or the numbers were just too high. And that kind of, wasn't that the reason?
Numbers were high, and at that time, if I believe correctly, the bilingual program was still housed at Sparta as well, which has since been moved to Charter Oak. So this is something that we have talked to Templeton about, and when they come in to do our November update, they're going to talk to us about solutions for this issue.
As these rules come into play, the objective is for the majority of students to go where they're zoned. And I think that the implementation of these rules, it'll be a little bit more difficult this time, but I think as time goes on, these issues will become less and less of a problem. The other thing that we did was it was more what we did in practice as opposed to in rule, and we're going to allow district employees to request a transfer for his or her child to any district campus. And we thought that would be more of a benefit or something that you have being a teacher in this district, more in line with a benefit like having insurance or having some other benefit that the school district provides. That's just something that we did. We thought we would recognize employees with that. The other thing that we wanted to stress is that any approved interdistrict transfer is going to be any student that's approved for that is going to be assigned to the campus of closest proximity to his or her home address. And if for some reason if that campus is overcrowded, then the school that is closest to that school will be where the child is going to attend. Is that right, Mr. Morgan?
That's correct.
Okay. And for all interdistrict transfers, we're not going to allow that to exceed 4% of the total BISD enrollment. You can only take in so many transfers. Obviously, our first objective is to meet the needs of our students here in this district. So we had to put the cap, and it's more of an arbitrary figure, but a cap is a cap. So we capped it at 4%. And I think that pretty much covers everything that we discussed in the meeting. Dr. Montgomery, Mr. Flory, any additions to that?
Do you just want to talk about Miller Heights real quick? Right now, they're going up to Lake Belton. We also addressed that. Or Mr. Morgan, however you guys want to do it.
Yeah, as I understand it, the Miller Heights students, all the 8th graders will attend the assigned campuses. Is that right?
Yes, they will all be assigned to Belton High School, and it's a large group. It's over 70 students, I believe, and they were at elementary school together, at middle school together, and to high school together too. So they're staying with the peer group they've had since kindergarten. They will still be together. Some of their Lake Belton classmates will go to the new high school, but that neighborhood is zoned back to the south side of town. They will go to Belton High School.
In all intra-district, I'm thinking interstate commerce, all intra-district transfers, that is all students coming from another district in high school will be assigned to Belton High School. Is that correct? I know that's not listed here, but all of them, they're not going to go to Lake Belton, they're going to go to Belton High School. Mr. Flory, anything else on that you can recall? I think that addresses the high points. Mr. Morgan, is there anything else that we didn't address?
I think the one thing just to kind of get across is the idea of closed campuses. This will be the first time that, to our knowledge, to my knowledge, that BISD has had closed campuses. It's really in line with what other large districts do, and it is a way to protect the students that are at a campus and not put ourselves in situations where we're having to do lots of leveling after school starts. That's a hard, difficult process with lots of tough conversations, and if the key is to try to be proactive and not get to that point where you're over capacity and you do have to move students to other campuses once school starts. That's a painful process that we would rather stay out of that business if we can. And capping it at a certain percentage, whether it's 96% is kind of what our initial recommendation is going to be, allows for growth within those neighborhoods, whereas you don't get a lot of houses built over the summer, new families move in, more kids than were expected, and all of a sudden now you're over capacity and you're having to move kids to another campus. So those are the situations we really want to try to stay out of if we can. At the secondary level, capacity is not going to be as big of an issue because we're built for some growth there. I mean, it's 4 or 5 of the elementary campuses where we're really cramped at this time that we'd like to probably look at that in the spring of closing those campuses for additional new transfers. And we're talking about new transfers. If it's already a pre-approved or it has already been an approved transfer, they would not be touched unless we get to a point where we had to move students because of overcrowding.
And of course, the other issue that we talked about was the fact that nothing we can do about is the UIL guidelines with respect to students in sports and that kind of thing. There's nothing we can do about that. We just have to follow the UIL rules.
The UIL is clear that you cannot change schools for athletic purposes, whether that's schools within the same district or schools in adjoining or other districts. If you cannot change schools or choose schools for athletic purposes.
Okay.
So that we want to be really thoughtful about that and make sure we don't put ourselves and our kids in situations where kids may lose eligibility because of they're moving schools for athletic purposes.
Anyone else have any questions or comments about that? Dr. Banashal, is anything else that you can recall that we needed to address?
When we were talking about 4% of students coming into the school district, we're running about 3.6, so we really have not been near that 4%. Again, kind of an arbitrary cap, but that's been the cap that's been used, so I think you're very, very safe with your 4.
Okay. So at the end of the day, I'm sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I just want to reiterate again, thank you so much for the way that meeting ran. I mean, I think it was very obvious to those of us in the room that, the preparation that went into that was outstanding, right? I mean, we were ready to come in, have the conversation, boom, 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 get to the points that you really needed answers on and we're looking for guidance on. I think it went really well, right? And so, I'm happy to continue. I think it's a great addition. Thank you.
And that's the man that needs the credit. I mean, he put a lot of time, a lot of hours, a lot of detail work into this, and has been the real front man. So, Mike, exceptional job.
And another thing is that in our local policy rules, and of course, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Banashal, but we have to have 2 readings of rules or policies before they're approved. And in this situation, we had exigent circumstances because of the transfers that issues we're trying to address within the district now because of the new school opening in the fall. So our policy meeting actually functioned as an essential first reading. This is our second reading, so then we can vote on the policies tonight.
Yeah. In your local policy, I think it's BF, I think I'm correct, it talks about 2 meetings. And so for this one, because we're already a little behind the 8 ball and getting this pushed out to our parents, and Ms. Tiekle and I talked about this, that will count as our first meeting on this. From here on out, I want to clean it up a little bit more. And part of that cleanup is she gave me some language to use on the agenda for the policy committee meetings. And then also whenever we bring you policy, this time we brought you a lot of things to discuss, but we'll bring you a template of the policy that we're looking at, and then you can make changes to that template. And then Ms. Tiekle was satisfied that would absolutely be that first meeting. It would be fine. But again, the policy, it's a local policy. This is not a legal policy, but the local policies, there's 2 meetings. It doesn't even refer to readings. One of the things that we were talking about earlier is by the time that you're asked to approve this tonight, your policy committee will have met on it. You got minutes from this meeting. You had a news of the week on this meeting, and then you're getting a report tonight. So hopefully you feel well informed before you're ever asked to make a decision regarding anything, but in this case, policy.
I think the next big issue that we discussed in the meeting was kids that are put in DAEP, and if that kid is involved in advanced placement course or dual credit course, if you're in DEAP, then those kids cannot be mixed with kids that are not in DAEP. In other words, if you have a child that ends up in DAEP and is a dual credit course student, then that student will not be able to complete the coursework because that coursework is not offered off the premises. So, and it's not offered at DAEP. So, for example, if a child was placed in DAEP and they had a final exam coming up in a dual credit, they're not going to be able to take that final exam and potentially could end up with an F in the course. And that's not something that we do locally. That's just state law, and we wanted the district to be aware of that. We want parents to be aware of that. We want students to be aware of that. That's not something that we can control. We're handcuffed when it comes to that. That's just something that the legislature has done, and there's not anything that we can do about that. It's really it's a sad situation. We talked about maybe, how can we address that? Maybe if for example, Temple College, if they offered the course on their campus where it could be taught at their campus, then perhaps the child could attend the dual credit course there and still complete it. But we just don't have the resources nor the manpower to address that issue within the district. I think that pretty much summarizes that, doesn't it, Dr.
Another
Basho?
thing that can fall in that category is career and technology courses because of the labs that are required for those. I'll take welding as an example. If you have a student, Stephanie's in the back, but if you have a student that's in a welding course and they receive a DAEP assignment, there's no way they can pick up their welding course over here because it's a part of a lab. And we can't, by law, put them back with their peers. And so they would stand to lose credit. And our discussion earlier today when we were working with Manuel is we need to make sure our parents are really, really clear that DAP assignment can certainly have an academic consequence if a student is in these special types of programs.
And that could be detrimental if, for example, if a kid's a senior and about to graduate and needs this welding class to graduate to have enough credits, and they end up in DAP as a senior, and they can't finish the course, they're not going to be able to graduate. And there's not a thing that we can do about it locally. I mean, that's just a state mandate. I'm going to skip to the House Bill 2840, impact on board meetings agenda. But first of all, are there any other comments about the DAEP issue? As far as the House Bill 2840, that was part of one of the legislative mandates that came out this year, this legislative session, that addressed the member of the public addressing a governmental body like a school board, like this board up here. We had discussed, TASB has interpreted that particular statute, so I think there's a little bit of a concern as to how that statute is going to be interpreted finally. Obviously, we don't have any court interpretation. This thing just came out this year. Just when we read it in our committee, and then looking at TASB's interpretation, it didn't really it didn't jive with what we thought that the provision meant. So we decided to go ahead and table that until we get further clarification from someone higher than us to determine which direction we're going to take with that. Dr. Basher, was Angela going to look into that?
Well, she has.
She has.
And we've talked, but that definition keeps changing over time because TASB's trying to figure out the intent of 2840 and then the reality of 2840, and those sometimes vary. For the general public, what they need to know is we've always done public forums here. Most school districts do, but there are a few out there that have not. And this isn't just for public education. These are also for all governmental institutions, so city governments, county governments, et cetera. For those that have never had a public forum, that it's now required. And so for a lot of them, that is a huge change in their practice and procedures. For us, it's not going to be that big a change. When it fell during the meeting was a change for us, because the new law is it has to come at the very beginning of any type of discussion of the board. So we put it at the very beginning of the workshop, whereas before it was at the beginning of the formal meeting. So for us, that may be the only change that comes about because of 2840. But again, we're kind of hanging right now. I'm hoping during update 114 that's about to come out from TASB that there will be some clarification on that. But Ms. Teakle and I both are tracking it and following it. But as of right now, we both are on the same sheet of music, and that's all we know.
And I think that the flip side of that is that we want the public to know that obviously we're not ignoring this particular bill. We're just trying to make sure that we get the right guidance on it so that we can put it into play. And incidentally, we're going to be in our next meeting, we're going to be reviewing our policy, our procedures as a board, and maybe that will come up during that segment, and we can address it at that point. But we're going to do an exhaustive look at our procedures as a board at our next meeting, and then that will have a report the following school board meeting.
When 2840 first came out, they were saying that you could not put any time constraints upon your public speakers. And they have said, no, that's not the case now. So again, there's some pretty significant changes that have happened over the last 6 weeks on the interpretation of that. One of the very clear pieces, though, is if you have 50 people in your audience that all want to speak on the same topic, they all have the right to speak on that topic. You can't require that they select a representative and that representative speak for the group. So that's a very clear piece, and that it be at the very beginning of the meeting is another real clear piece. Committee meetings has been kind of up for grabs, whether or not you do a public comment section at the beginning of committee meetings. We've posted that for all of ours. It's better safe than sorry, so that's how we're operating at this point in time. So again, there are some sure pieces and there's a lot of unsure pieces. Even audio and video kind of came up as part of this. For districts that are over 10,000, that they videotape and audio tape their board meetings has been part of law. The question through this one came up about committee meetings, and we have continued. I called TASB on this, and they said, well, as of right now, if you're over 10,000, continue on. So that's exactly what we're doing for even the committees. And people are watching those because we had a comment about that.
Right. Now, I want to stress that our policy committee meetings are also posted just like we did this meeting. So it's not like it's something that's done on the side. It's actually posted. Just the same policies and procedures are followed for this particular meeting as it is for the policy meetings. The last thing that we discussed was since we're going to have 2 high schools beginning in the fall, we talked about, what do we do about mascots? And I know that that's been a sensitive issue for a lot of folks. What mascot does Sparta have? What mascot does Miller Heights have? And do we have different mascots, for all the schools? Are we all Tigers, north of this area, and then or in the south we're all Tigers, and in the north we're all Broncos? So we didn't address or pass any policies with respect to that. So that's going to be addressed administratively. So we didn't do anything with respect to that, although you need to know that that's an issue that's been discussed, and there's going to be ongoing discussions with that, and there'll be some administrative rules that will come out of that at some point.
TASB always recommends to put as little as you need to into policy and put everything else into an administrative procedures manual. And so this is one of those because it's probably a unique point in time for Belton ISD to put that into the administrative procedures manual.
And the point is that it's important. It was important enough for us to be discussing it, and a lot of thought is going into that because obviously it's going to affect a lot of folks. So I think that from my view and my standpoint, I think from Dr. Montgomery and Mr. Flora's standpoint, I think I'm convinced and I rest assured that it's being taken care of administratively and taken care of properly.
And on this one, just as we thank Mike for the FDA and FDB, I think Elizabeth, because they put a lot of time and work, and Josh and Becca into determining what needed to happen as far as those mascots, and it's going to get really exciting in the next week.
I think that was all the issues that we discussed.
Wow, that was wonderful, Manuel. Thank you. If I can use the term stunned,
Yeah.
that was amazing. It was thoughtful. You all did a wonderful job. Thank you, Board, for participating in this committee and both committees, actually. Thank you, Mike Morgan. Thank you so much, and Elizabeth and team. And, of course, we thank Dr. Battershell for bringing this to us and allowing us to participate. Go
Dr.
ahead.
Lovesmith brought up the issue regarding the DAP.
And Dr. Lovesmith and
Yes,
everyone
so-
else is
so thank you
involved
for that.
in these policy-making decisions. This is a very unique thing that we're doing. This is something, I've been on the board since 2013, and to be this far in the weeds on this is pretty amazing. Wouldn't you agree, Dr. Montgomery? Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for getting us on board and getting us on track. So our next committee report is going to be our facilities report. Presenter, Mr. Ty Tigard.
Thank you very much. Just want to say thanks so much to Dr. Battershell for bringing this committee concept to the board. I like this. We get to do more hands-on and, like you said, get into the weeds and be more informed and feel like we're getting our hands dirty with some of this. So I've been in construction for 14 years. I do it every day. So being on the facilities committee seemed like a natural fit. I remember when I got on the board 2.5 years ago, we had a list. I think it had 5 to 7 points on it, and I'm like one of the least patient people in the entire world, and I wanted to know why we couldn't get the list done right away. And then I started learning more about school finance, and it's kind of like our personal finances. You know, if you want a pool, you got to have the money to build the pool. So it's an honor to be on this committee. And the thing that struck me right off the bat was coming from a list that was really, I think 7 points, maybe 8 points the last time we saw it about a year ago. When we got the email the other day, it was like I was opening Christmas presents at Christmas, because this is a lot of hard work. This is just the first page, and there's 4 pages of points that these folks rolled up their sleeves, put on their comfortable shoes, I hope, and they started walking campuses. Dr. Battershell, Dr. Muller, David Bennett, I think Deanna was involved in some of this too, I'm not sure, but to come up with this comprehensive of a list, that's a lot of hard work. And I think the thing that I've learned in my time on the board is that when we're building these new buildings, these new high schools, these new elementaries, one of the challenges for districts, especially districts in our situation, is maintaining all the other stuff, because you don't ever want to have haves and have-nots. So this list to me represents an opportunity to make a big difference for people across the district. And if you'll notice with the list, we hit it from athletics all the way through all the high schools, the old high school, the middle schools, the elementaries. This is a comprehensive list. So first of all, I just want to say thank you to David Bennett, Dr. Muller, Dr. Battershell. This is a lot of hard work. It took a lot to put this together. I bid jobs all the time, and for me to bid one project at a time can take hours just to do one project. So for them to put this list together and then have amounts that are going to be pretty solid amounts. Now, they're going to fluctuate. It's one thing I want to stress in this, that these will fluctuate. In the remodel business that I do, in some of my business, we call it snakes in the walls. You don't know what you're going to get into till you start tearing stuff out. And so this list will fluctuate a little bit as far as the amounts, but this was an absolute amazing amount of work. So I think the thing as a board that we are tasked by being representative of our stakeholders is, and the money part of this is that we want to make sure that we stay within the state guidelines of having money in our account to take care of rainy days, and we're there. We're also blessed. I want to say thank you to Hugh Shine and Brad Buckley, some of our local guys in the state of Texas, for putting together House Bill 3, which really, I'm just telling you, that was a meaningful legislative session that we had this last time, and House Bill 3 helped us. And one of the reasons why we were kind of in the holding pattern on spending money for the last couple of years was because we weren't sure if House Bill 3 would make it, first of all, and then we didn't know how the new high school, the moving costs, and how we were going to hit on the numbers. So Jared, your people done a great job, man. We're doing great on budget with that. Jennifer, I'm just amazing what we're doing in our accounting department. Our CFO is doing such a good job. So this is just a culmination of all facets of our district. We're very blessed to be able to do this. So basically what we came up with, and I've got this picture here that I'm going back to, is we are going to be able to basically spend all the money that we had from the 2012 bond, and that's what the orchestra and the fine arts edition is going to be. So that's going to pretty much balance that money out. It's going to be gone. But we've got a new orchestra, and we've got new things for the choir and some storage and some stuff that we really, really needed. And so that kind of got bumped up to the top of the list just out of nowhere. It was all, oh, hey, they're homeless. We got to take care of our fine arts kids, which we love. In Belton, we're blessed to have such good fine art. So that kind of takes that out. And we are going to have some money left over from some interest with the 2017 bond, but we're not quite sure yet how that's exactly going to come in. But because of House Bill 3 and what the legislature did for us is we're going to be able to put about $6 million or so into our fund balance 2018, 2019. So what we don't want to have is we don't want to have too much extra money sitting in our accounts. We want to put that money back into our district. We want to put that money back into our facilities where our employees and our kids can utilize the funds. So we feel like we need to spend some money because it's there and it's appropriated. It's there for us to spend. Is that a good way to put it? Okay, so that's basically kind of where the money's coming from. And so when they put this list together, they went to principals, they went to facilities. We have 134 buildings in Belton ISD. That's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of facilities that we take care of. And I forgot how many acres, 200-something acres, David, that we maintain, take care of with our grounds crew. And they look better than they've looked in years, by the way. Our grounds crews are doing a really good job. But over time, things just get old. And I remember year before last, I was at Miller Heights for Meet the Teacher Night, and a lady came up to me, Shelley Splitgerber, and said, hey, did you know that we don't have air conditioning in our gyms? And I was shocked because we've got these unbelievable facilities across the district. And I was like, wow, I didn't know. So one of the highlights of this list is we're going to get air conditioning in the gyms at our 3 oldest elementary schools. And I'm so proud for that. Because part of some of the stuff that I saw in one of the committees that you've met with is we want to make sure our elementary kids are getting 30 minutes a day of exercise. And when it's 107 degrees outside and they can't go in their gym, how are they going to do that sitting in the library or sitting in their classroom? So this is going to enable these kids at these older schools to be able to go into those gyms when it's 107, which we know it's 107 a lot more than it's 57 degrees around here. So that's the one thing that I was really, really excited when I got to digging into this and spending down on this list. I'm just going to pull a few things, some highlight things from this, just to kind of let the public know. The swim center, I think when the swim center got built, it was a wonderful facility. My wife was on the very first ever swim team in Belton ISD. They used to practice at Mary Hardin Baylor. And so whenever the Potts donated the money and the people in Belton ISD put that facility together, it's done a marvelous job, but it is definitely something that is on the top of our priorities list to look into. So what this recommendation that we're going to have with this facilities meeting to spend some money is right now we need to update the equipment that's in the back. The filters and the cleaners and the strainers and the scrubbers and whatever these things are, they need some attention right now. So this takes care of that in this recommendation that we have there. Also, I don't know how many of you have been up in the Tiger Field press box, but it's antiquated and it needs some work. So this also is going to give them a little bit of money to spruce it up and move a couple walls around. And then looking forward to maybe something down the road. We're also going to renovate that old baseball field house. And if anybody's walked the old soccer field house our BISD is going to do this renovation, and they did a fantastic job on that, so I feel like it's going to be really nice. But then you get to these old campuses like Beck's. How many schools has Beck's been in Belton ISD through the years? Honestly, I mean, it has been such a used facility. Elementaries, middle schools, I guess it was part of the high school at one time. So when you look at the list, look at what Beck's is going to get. That's a lot of stuff right there. That's tremendous. Sprucing things up. So let me back up a little bit. I'm not nearly as smooth as Manuel on this speaking stuff. But there's 3 criteria that the committee was looking at. Number 1 was safety. That's at the forefront of everything that we do. We got to make all of our campuses as safe as possible. The other criteria was equity, making sure that everybody feels like they're at a nice school, that they're in a nice facility, and capacity. We also got to really watch our capacities. And we've been so blessed the last couple of years since I've been on the board. Templeton Demographics does a bang-up job of helping us keep track of our capacity and where we are on our campuses. And I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of at Belton ISD over the last 15 years is they're staying ahead. We've stayed ahead of the growth. We really have. And we're growing. We're on top 75 districts in the state of Texas in growth. So those were the 3 things that they really looked at. So when you look at most of these lists, some of the things you point out is there's safety on all of this. We're putting safety at the forefront. A couple things at BHS that I was really proud of. We're gonna increase the security enhancements up front. I think when you walk in the front there, I'm in that building a lot, and I think we need some more security up front. There's $50,000 put in there for that. A couple other things I'm really excited about is we're going to upgrade some stuff in the PAC. I mean, what room in our district gets used more than that? I mean, someone's in there probably tonight doing something. So we're going to do some renos to the PAC, make it a little bit safer, a little bit better, lighting, some things like that. Then something else I wasn't aware of until being on this committee was our CTE that we're so proud of, and we're putting so many kids out there into the workforce with our CTE. Our facilities are dilapidated, and we need to upgrade our CTE facilities. Now, expansion, that's something we'll talk about in a minute, but right now this is going to put $150,000, if I remember, into the CTE to renovate and to make things safer, like $40,000 for the ventilation or welding, make it safer for our kids. So we're going to put more emphasis on the CTE. As you can see, let's see, New Tech, we're going to paint all of the hallways in the classrooms. I thought that was one to highlight. That's a great facility. And something that we all remarked on was when we go walk these older campuses in Belton, how well our custodial staffs do and how well our maintenance department does. These are beautiful, well-kept, clean campuses. And yeah, they're not, Chisholm Trail or High Point with some of that stuff, but they are very well kept, and that's something that we've been very proud of in Belton ISD to make sure that these older campuses are still places with bright colors and clean and I know they're little, but it's still nice for the kids to be able to go to school in such clean. So definitely a high five to our custodial staff for taking so much pride in their work and keeping our campuses so clean. Let's see, what else? I mean, it's really across the board. We're gonna go to High Point. I know it's one of our newer campuses, but we're adding some additional cameras. That seemed to be a theme on every campus is we need more cameras. I don't know about y'all, but we need to be able to see what's going on, and we need to have record of what's going on. If something does happen, we can plug it up, and we can see if things have happened. Let's see here. Lakewood, it's been around since the 80s. They've got a ton of stuff on the list. And this list was put in priority. Yellow and green were the number 1 and number 2 priority lists. And then blue was number 3. But like Dr. Mueller said in the meeting, there really isn't a lot of difference between the 1 priority and the 3 priority list. And we actually moved some things up from the 3 to the 1 list that night when we really started digging down into it and seeing, some of the stuff that we needed. Look at Miller Heights. I mean, in Leon Heights, it just kind of makes me smile. Miller Heights is that yellow list right there. There's a lot of things that is going to go on to Miller Heights. Let's see what else. Leon Heights is getting a ton of stuff here too. Southwest, another huge $177,000 going to Southwest. Pirtle Elementary, $203,000. So you see, it was a broad net that was cast across our district whenever this was a lot of moving parts. So, and something else to think about when you look at the list is, this isn't just something that can be approved and then we're gonna sit around and wait. There's no waiting period. We're gonna start taking bids and start getting things mobilized immediately. This is something that's gonna be moving and moving fast. And as we go along with this committee, I think some of the blue items will obviously, once we start working on the green and the yellows, the blues will obviously move to the forefront. And something that didn't make the list, and I want to make sure that it gets pointed out, but our ag department has grown quickly over the last few years, and it's because of the leadership that we have in that department. And so we kind of took a step back at the end of that meeting and talked about we need to go take a look at that too and see about what we can do to help those kids, because we're at max capacity in our ag barns with the animals and the 4-H kids and stuff like that. So that's something that we definitely need to take a look at down the road. So as we kind of got through going through the list, there's some big money items that really can't be addressed with the fund balance money that we have now, but it's stuff that we need to be looking at down the road, because when we talk to Templeton, we know that in 5 years, based on the growth that we have, we're going to need another elementary school, maybe 2 elementary schools, maybe at one time. It just depends on the vision at that point. We know in 7 or 8 years there's going to be another middle school needed. We know that in 15 years, don't anybody fall out of your seat, but there's probably going to be a need for another 3rd comprehensive high school. That's how fast we're growing. And the thing about it is, they haven't been wrong over the last 20 years, Templeton. They hit it really close. So we know what's coming down the pipe. So some of the big things that we're kind of looking at down the road is the swim center, number one. That's got to be at the forefront of our, other than the educational things that we look at, the elementary schools and middle school, we know we're going to need to spend money with our swim center. So that's going to be a challenge to figure out how we can keep the swimmers swimming. So we're going to have to find a place for them to be swimming while, if that passes in a bond, while we're renovating. And then to what extent do we renovate? I know there's been some long-range plans looking at even a dive center and an outdoor pool and an indoor pool. So there's different things that we can bring to the table at that time. But I just want to let the swimming people know that that is definitely something that has been talked about. It's been talked about for 2 years as long as I've been on the board. We discussed it at length in our meeting the other night. So that's definitely something that we're going to look at. And then something else that I know that's coming down the pipe is with 2 high schools, 2 fully functional high schools playing sports at Tiger Stadium, we know we're going to have to do something to that press box. And I've seen numbers anywhere from $500,000 to $3.5 million, depending on the scope of what we're going to try to do with that. So that's something else to look for down the road. Tennis. I think we're going to address a little bit of the tennis overcrowding maybe up front, but I know that's been something that's been on our list. Adding some courts at Belton High School so they can have bigger tournaments, more efficient, where they can bring in some revenue, those type of things. That's definitely something that I know we've discussed down the road. And then something that I really, really hope that makes the next bond is CTE additions. CTE I'm in construction, and I know we don't have enough in certain trades out there in the workforce. So CTE is a wonderful thing, and I know years ago we took the board years ago, and the administration put CTE at the forefront, and we have an outstanding program. But you can see the price tag up to $5.5 million, and I think that's money well spent with the CTE stuff. So, any questions about this? Y'all can tell I'm kind of excited about this, right? Floor?
I have
If you want to see that list, we'll post it online so that since you can't see it from here to there, so you can go on and find your campuses and you can see the items that are priority 1s and 2s, because the recommendation from the committee will be to fund the 1s and 2s and then the additions that the committee put on.
And I didn't throw the amount out there yet. So what the recommendation is going to be for $3.5 million when we get a chance to do that. It's good. It's coming in at about 3.2, 3.3, but we've got a little bit extra in there because, as you know, some of these are going to hit a little under, some of these could possibly hit a little over, and we felt like $3.5 million would be the appropriate number based on the bids that that David and Dr. Muller put together. So I feel really good about those numbers. Yes, sir.
Now I'm going to get you. No,
Got
you. So with the priority 1 and priority 2 items that are on here without dollar amounts, right? I mean, so when we potentially address this later tonight, I mean, if they don't have a dollar amount, does that mean they fall off and they stay on the list going forward, or they fall into that $3.5 million pot as long as there's still money? But what's the intention? Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't mind answering that one.
They won't necessarily fall off. You know, there will be some items that won't be quite as expensive as anticipated. There'll be some items that will be more, so we'll pick up as many of the 1s and 2s if they are a yellow or a green as we can.
All right, so go ahead, Daniel.
In the discussions that you had in the committee meeting, you mentioned the elementary schools and the middle schools. Any discussions about the Belton High School? Anything needed within that particular building
Oh, yeah, we approved.
that was a concern?
BHS, you can see the list. I mean, it's got lots of bullet points. But I think that Dr. Kincannon had already started addressing some things, knowing that the new building was coming in, some furniture, some different items, some different things. So I think we've already been taking care of some things. And something else we need to understand, that there's going to be some small ticket items on campuses that they're just going to put a work order in to take care of. They don't need our approval. They don't need that. They're just going to handle certain things, that David Bennett and their people, you know, for small requests, things like that. That's just something that's going to be taken care of on a day-to-day, just, you know, operations. But, oh yeah, Belton High School, there's all kinds of stuff. And like I said, we moved 3 things from the blue list to the priority list in our meeting last Wednesday at Belton High School. We want to make sure that stays a great facility.
One of the updates for Belton High School was repainting halls. And so, again, giving a refresh. Obviously, the secured entranceway was once, and there was some HVAC on that list, David, if I recall correctly, in different units. And so it'll have quite a bit of that done.
All right. Any more questions on that part? Okay. All right, so I'm going to give an update on the construction projects. I think Jared's on the agenda for later today. The Lake Belton High School Orchestra expansion is on budget and it's on time. We're in great shape on that, from what I've been told, and we're at about 65% completion on Lake Belton right now. And I was coming down 317 yesterday, coming back from Lubbock, and I saw all the lights, and from the distance, I mean, it's such an impressive thing when you're driving through there. So I know Jared and the guys are staying on track with our Lake Belton High School. So we're at about 65% completion there. And then there's some change requests that Dr. Muller had put in. I think we put in basically $61,000 change request for some turf and some electrical work done at the baseball and softball batting cages, I think. Isn't that right, Jeff? At the new high school, we had them, I think they saw the need for some of that. There's another change order for about $32,000 that's going to have something to do with some sound issues in the new high school, some acoustical things that the engineers kind of discovered, hey, we probably need to put some acoustical things in some places. There's that change order. Let's see here. Something for the key things. What was that, Jeff, that we talked about? The $6,800 one?
That's just a software update.
Yeah, it's just a software update for our security with our IDs. Then there was a $20,000 one, additional security cameras and supporting. That's just more updates to the software stuff for some of the security things. So those are some of the change orders. But I'm just going to tell you what, guys, this is to me, we're blessed to have the money, and we're blessed to have the leadership that would take the time to go put this list together. And with approval later tonight, hopefully, these folks are ready to go, roll up their sleeves and get to work.
Thank you, Ty.
I want to thank Dr. Muller, and I want to thank David Bennett. I want to thank the principals for doing these walkthroughs with us. Not all of us were wearing tennis shoes, by the way. Press box is interesting in heels, but I do. This was really a group effort, and we appreciate it. And things are coming to you. Timing, going back, Ty, you mentioned that a little bit. Is after tonight, if approved, then David and Dr. Muller will begin with the bidding process for a lot of this and putting it into work orders. Those bids will need to come back to you, obviously, for approval. And so that would be at your November board meeting, we hope. And that some of these projects can begin. Some of them that don't require a bid can start immediately. Those requiring a bid would probably begin in December and January.
That was my understanding, that would definitely get the ball rolling on these as quick as possible. You can see that they have start dates, approximate start dates on all of these, or most of them that we would be approving tonight. So, any more questions?
I just have one question. Are there any financial caps for the change requests? Is there a dollar limit before it's no
Well, it's
longer
gonna
a change request?
be, it's gonna be fluid. Each one, like I said, when we get into some of them, they may go a little bit above, and then if that's the case, I mean, I guess it would come back to us if something just kind of goes out of whack.
Are you referring to the change orders or the list?
Here on the list here, it has change requests.
Oh, change
And-
requests.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm just wondering if there's a cap. If something's, $100,000, is that going to be a change request, or is that going to come back to the board for approval?
And Dr. Muller, tell me if I'm incorrect, but based upon the general conditions contract, that as long as it's part of the owner's contingency within the guaranteed maximum price, there would not be a cap.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ty. That was very well done. Thank you all of you who contributed to that particular report. Very excited about all the improvements. Excited about that list, Ty. I'm just as excited as you are. That's pretty cool.
Well, it is. I was so excited when I saw it, and let's get some work done.
Okay, again, very well done, both of you. Thank you so much. The next item on our list is going to be recognitions. Josh is going to get us started. Board, you all are welcome to meet everyone down on the floor, and we'll just stay down there until we welcome and congratulate everybody.
Good to see you. Because I sure. Good to see you. Good to see you. All right, let you all get settled. Good evening. We're going to start off with the National Merit Program. They've recognized current Belton High School senior Joshua Bledsoe and former Belton High School student Rohan Sami as semifinalists in the National Merit Scholarship Program for their performance on the preliminary SAT, the PSAT. To qualify as a National Merit semifinalist, Bledsoe and Sami's high scores on the PSAT placed them in the top 1% of more than 1.6 million students who took the test last fall. As the next step in the scholarship competition, Bledsoe and Sami will submit essays, recommendations, and additional test scores to the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. Finalists will be announced between April and June 2020. Congratulations, Joshua. The National Merit Program has recognized Belton High School seniors Sydney Hunt, Dean Biave, Gayatri Devi Thirunavakarusu, and Uni Wu as commended students for 2020. Each year, more than 1.5 million high school students take the PSAT, National Merit Scholar Qualifying Test. Of those, just 50,000 qualify for the National Merit Program, including 34,000 selected as commended scholars. While commended scholars do not continue on to compete for National Merit Scholarships, they are often candidates for special scholarships sponsored by other organizations. Congratulations. All right, congratulations to our National Merit Commended Scholars. And the College Board has recognized Belton High School seniors Dean Biava, Miranda Davila, Gabriella Hansen, who's actually competing in FFA tonight at Academy, so she's not here with us, Jonah Jimenez, and Elizabeth Moctezuma Manzanero as Hispanic Scholars for 2020. Hispanic or Latino juniors that take the PSAT National Merit Qualifying Test can apply for academic recognition as part of the College Board's National Hispanic Recognition Program. Every year, the NHRP recognizes about 5,000 of the 250,000 students who take the test. While there is not a scholarship competition associated with this designation, colleges and universities do use this program to identify academically exceptional Hispanic, Latino students. Congratulations to you all. If our other scholars mind coming back up. Okay, each October, National Principals Month recognizes the essential role that our principals play in making a school great. The success of Belton ISD as a district is a direct result of the hard work that our campus principals do on behalf of our students and staff, and worthy of recognition. Belton ISD's principals are Sue Banfield, Belton Early Childhood School; Jennifer Connor, Charter Oak Elementary, who is just showing up. Give Jennifer a chance to swing by. Elizabeth McMurtry, Chisholm Trail Elementary. Amy Armstrong, High Point Elementary. Marcy Beck, Leon Heights Elementary. Dr. Becky Musel, Lakewood Elementary. Hope Orsag, Miller Heights Elementary. Rebecca Vaughn, Pirtle Elementary. Stacy Cox, Southwest Elementary. Julie Manley, Sparta Elementary. Brooke Itz, Tarver Elementary. Chris Hobson, Lake Belton Middle School. Michelle Tisch, North Belton Middle School. Kevin Taylor, South Belton Middle School. Ben Smith, Belton High School. Genesee Thomason, Belton New Tech High School at Wasco. Jill Ross, Lake Belton High School. And Sandy Garrett, DAEP. Thank you to all our principals.
All right, so we're gonna move back over here for a group photo in just a moment. We're gonna attempt. Yes. Okay. Okay. All right, so everyone come back this way.
So glad with a long list of names I actually knew. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. You want to get that one too. Yeah. But at least some of these, like the merit ones, they were also AP scholars, so some of those names are circulating. Then we get something like, I had to ask him, I thought it was Stratus, but I heard Stratus, but it's apparently it's Stratus. Yeah, instead of just a few of them stand up there. Yeah, I agree.
2, 3. Congratulations, thank you.
Don't go far. All right. Miss Beck, don't go far. We are going to recognize Eli Jackson tonight. So, Mr. Jackson, if you'd come on down. He is our Temple Rotary Club Rotary Educator of the Month. Mr. Jackson has been with the district 4 years, and he's been all of his years in education are with us. In Mr. Jackson's classroom, one cannot help but immediately sense his genuine enthusiasm for the content simply by the many handwritten motivational quotes from both literary and historical figures posted around his room. He incorporates technology into the content in such a way that his students are excited, and he even shared his passion recently with teachers across the district, leading a professional development course in coding during the summer. Marcy Beck, principal at Leon Heights, stated, Mr. Jackson is an avid and enthusiastic learner. He passes that on to his students. We are truly fortunate to have him at Leon Heights Elementary, and I'm proud to nominate him as the Educator of the Month. Congratulations.
Celebrated nationally on the first day in October, Manufacturing Day is designed to showcase the reality of modern manufacturing careers by encouraging companies around the country to open their doors to students, parents, teachers, and community leaders. Locally, 2 Belton manufacturing companies did just that by opening their doors to 30 of our current career and technical education students in a special day-long event organized by the Belton Economic Development Corporation. Our students were given the opportunity to see the reality of impressive modern manufacturing careers at both True and Stratasys Direct Manufacturing. For providing such a special Manufacturing Day experience and their continued partnership as members of the Belton ISD CTE Advisory Committee, True and Stratasys Direct Manufacturing are this month's Big Red community partners. True Plant Manager Jerry McCartney and Stratasys' Director of Operations for Belton, Jeff Washburn, are accepting the award. Thank you both, and thank you to your companies. Congratulations. And that'll wrap it up for recognitions. You're welcome.
Love the flexibility of this board. Thank you all so much. You know, you get used to doing things a particular way, and this was different, and different is good. So that was enjoyable. Really enjoyed that. And so the next item on our agenda is our consent agenda. Does the board have any board member have any item they wish to have pulled for further discussion? No? That being the case, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented? There's a motion by Mr. Taggart. Is there a second? Okay, that's a second by Mr. Fleur. All in favor, please raise your hand. Don't do it. Don't do it. I just said don't do it. I've been floored by the floor. Okay, next item on our agenda is the superintendent's report.
Just forget to do that. For the superintendent's report, information on special education, and we have sent this over to Jennifer on special education. Districts are being reviewed every 5 years. We are not up at this point in time, but I have sent the form over to her. Reading academies, this is a big deal in the state of Texas that teachers who have any component of reading have to have their reading certification test by the year 2021. It's kind of like what we were talking about before with 2840. We really don't know how this is going to roll out at all. So the Bell County superintendents met on it last week. I had a couple of our staff that went with me. We'll meet again on it this next month, and I'll let you know as I know more. State is allowing extended summer school, again, up to 220 days. There were questions that arose regarding how that's going to roll as well. That was with this last legislative session. Elementary mascots, as you know, November the 5th is the big day, not just for Texas, but for Belton ISD. Football game at McLean Stadium. This is pretty cool. Sam Skidmore called, and he had a wonderful idea to have the Georgetown High School game next year at McLean. So thank you, Sam, for letting us know, and we have approved that, and it's not that much more, and I think it'll be a great experience for all of our students, not just for our players, but for our dance team and band and fans. Security for Technology, again, Renaissance is our monitoring agency. They keep up with that. Bell County Tax Appraisal Representative, we just haven't been able to hit that. If you are interested, I will put the plea out one more time, then let us know. We thought we had someone from the city, but they could not. Technology survey, we have that completed by all of our teachers. We went through it this morning with our senior leadership team. You'll be getting more information on that coming up. There was a lot of direction coming out of that, specifically at Belton High School. We will have a CTE job fair for Belton seniors at the end of this year. Smart Tag, it was delayed further, but I gather it's supposed to begin this week. We hope. We hope. The Beef Innovative Teaching Grants, they are all in. Deanna reviewed 44 of those today or over the weekend or whenever she looked at all those. So she has submitted recommendations to the Beef Board on those. And she put them to 3 categories, and this is worth note. One of the categories were where they just either were not particularly well written or they weren't innovative at all. There was a second category where we don't know that they were innovative, but they were good projects. And then there was a third category where they were truly innovative projects. And so she broke them into those 3 categories because we really want our folks to write quality grants to the Beef because they work really hard to raise that money. And so we're going to highlight those that the Beef selects in various publications so people understand that standard of excellence. Underneath the CAFR, Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, Belton ISD is going above the average on that. They're going to superior on that. And again, we thank Jennifer Land. We say that all the time, but Jennifer really is just the ultimate quintessential professional. Dietitian, we have had a part-time individual who has resigned for personal reasons, and so they'll be moving to a full-time position because we just don't think we can get a part-time, and we've grown to the point where we really need to make that into a full-time. We have a police department meeting this week. We're looking forward to that, and that will be with Temple Police Department, Belton Police Department, and Morgan's Point to go through policies and procedures. Again, we want to invite you all for honoring Suzanne at the Marine Corps JROTC ball. That is on November the 2nd. It's a great honoree, and that is a true honor coming from the JROTC. So that is my report, unless you have any other questions. I have given you, or Connie put together, Connie and Elizabeth, our upcoming events for October and November. And again, anything that is highlighted or things that you may be interested in. So if you will look at that, that'd be great.
Awesome, thank you. Does the board have any comments or discussion? Well, I will tell you, as far as being an honoree at the ROTC ball, I really, when I got the invitation, it's much like some things that Elizabeth and I talked about. I thought I was just going to attend and, maybe show up and, just be part of. And then I keep seeing emails about being the guest of honor and, interesting. Feeling like Moses right now. Anywho, we'll move on to the next bit of business.
I just kept wondering who this Suzanne McDonald person was.
She's the old Sue Jordan. Next item on our agenda, thank you, Dr. Battershell, for that information, that report, is public hearing regarding the 2018-2019 School Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas report. Our presenter, Ms. Jennifer Land. Hello, Ms. Jennifer, welcome.
Hello. So good evening and welcome to the public hearing to discuss the 2019 Financial Accountability Rating System report, also known as our first report. This year's rating is based on information from the 2017-18 fiscal year. Do we have the report? And for some reason, it's not on my screen, but Okay, so I will just go with the flow and see if I can you back up to the background section? Yes, thank you so much. The first, or the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas, was adopted during the 1999 legislative session, and it was authorized in 2001, but implemented in 2003 by the Texas Education Agency. The district staff, student, and financial data that's used to determine our ratings is obtained through the State Public Education Information Management System, also known as PIMS, and the annual financial report that we submit to TEA annually. And that report is verified by our external auditors. There have been two major overhauls to the first system since the implementation in 2015 as well as 2018, with the most significant changes that were made in August 2018. They will be adopted or in play in the 2021 fiscal year and using data from 2019-2020. So this year's information is extremely important because it will be part of the changing first rating. The changes that will come about in the 2021 year include moving from 15 to 20 indicators, and those additional indicators target the variances that will be, they are going to look at variances in fund balance as well as any variances that occur in budget to actual revenues and ADA projections. So these changes are making the financial system more rigorous, and it will be, in essence, a lot more difficult to receive a perfect score and that top rating. First, in going to the goals of FIRST, it was created in an effort to provide a mechanism to measure a district's financial performance, similar to how the academic performance is rated. Goals include assessing the quality of finances, as well as measuring the level of funds allocated to district instruction, evaluating financial management decisions, improving the management of district financial resources, and just overall increasing financial accountability. The 2019 first rating it includes 15 indicators. However, one indicator was not rated simply because this is a year that it was more difficult, that we were getting a grace year. It was more difficult to obtain accurate information. And it remains in this rating year for comparison purposes. The letter grades that are available for the first system or the first rating are A, B, C, and F. And to achieve that A or superior rating such as Belton did, you have to receive a 90 or higher on the indicators. The first system is divided into 3 categories: critical indicators, solvency indicators, and financial competence indicators. In the past, there were 5 critical indicators, but now there are 4 this year because, as I previously mentioned, 1 indicator is not being rated this year. In order to get a score and pass the first rating, you have to pass these 5 indicators, and they are all yes, no responses. Indicator 1 ensures that the annual financial report is filed in a timely manner. As an August 31st fiscal year in this district, we have to file our annual financial report to meet first requirements by February 28th. This is a month or 30 days after the TEA deadline of January 28th. Indicator 2 requires that the district receive an unmodified or clean opinion on our annual financial report. And although material weaknesses are monitored, they are not factored into passing this indicator. Indicator 3 makes sure that the district pays debt obligations. Indicator 4 looks at whether the district made timely payments to TRS, IRS, and other payroll-related entities. The other solvencies, the other indicators, 6 through 12 are the solvency indicators, and the financial competence indicators are 13 through 15. So let's take a look at our indicators, how we did. So as previously mentioned, in the last several years, Belton has scored a perfect 100, and which equates to a superior rating. We have already talked about indicators 1 through 5, so if you could go ahead and move to indicator 6. We can talk about that because 1 through 5 we received yes answers to. So indicator 6 measures how long after the end of the fiscal year the district could have gone before we had a cash flow concern. And this requirement is in order to get the maximum 10 points, you have to have 90 days, and we met the requirements to get the full 10 points. Indicator 7 measures our debt ratio, which basically assesses whether we had sufficient short-term assets to pay off our short-term liabilities at the end of the year. And we receive maximum points for indicator 7. Indicator 8 measures whether our assets exceed our debts. This indicator recognizes also that high-growth districts incur additional operating costs due to opening new campuses as well as overall growth. And fast growth districts automatically receive the full points. And fast growth is described as if your enrollment increases by 7% or more over the last 5 years. And our enrollment growth was at 11.5%, so we received full points. On to indicators 9 through 11. Indicator 9 asks, did you spend more than you earned? And since we did not, we received the maximum points. Indicator 9 is a yes or no. So either you pass or you fail, and we passed. Indicator 10 measures the district ability to pay our bond principal and interest during the year, and we were able to successfully do that, so we received the maximum number of points on indicator 10. Indicator 11 measures the percentage of the budget spent on administration. Our ADA size is greater than 10,000, and we met the requirement to receive the maximum number of points for that indicator. Indicators 12, 13, 14, and 15 are each yes/no answers, so either you get 0 points or 10 points, of which we got 10 points on each one. Indicator 12 looks at our student-to-staff ratio. We also you get an automatic pass if your enrollment did not decline, and since we are a growing district, we got full points. Indicator 13 looks at the quality of our financial data that is submitted to PEAMS compared to the annual financial report that is submitted in a different system. And TEA looks to see if those numbers tied, and our numbers did tie. We had some rounding differences, and that's to be expected. That's where the 3% comes in, but our differences were less than 3%, so we got our full points there. Indicator 14 looks at material non-compliance related to federal funds and grants, and we had no issues there. And indicator 15 asks whether we had to ask for a payment plan from TEA as a result of TEA overpaying us. We did not have any issues in this area either. So to wrap it up, Belton received, of course, like I've stated, the 100 points for a superior rating. And this rating is based on our 2017-18 fiscal year data. And because this is a public hearing at this point, I will open the floor to any questions or comments. And I must say that I do have a copy of our annual financial management report available for anyone who would like a copy. Okay.
Thank you.
I have one question.
He has one question, Mr. Manuel.
For purposes, or for the public to know, this data and this rating, what does that say about our district? And what's the significance of that?
Well, thank you for asking that, because this rating and the data that we send in, it shows that as a district, we are being fiscally responsible and that we have the ability to continue successfully, and we don't have financial concerns. I actually brought some statistics to show how districts across Texas fared. I have not gone to the doctor to get glasses yet. So 88% of districts received a superior rating. 7% received an above standard rating. 3.4% received a met standard, and unfortunately, 1% or 11 districts out of 1,020 did receive a substandard achievement. I'm not pointing that out to say that it's easy to receive a superior rating, but overall throughout the state, districts are doing well. And I think we need to highlight that and applaud that, because it's not an easy task to manage the finances of a school district. So thank you for asking that question. Did I
Thank you.
fully answer it?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yep. Thank you, Ms. Jennifer.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda, we'll have a bond and construction projects update by Mr. Jared and possibly Curtis coming. Awesome. From O'Connell Robertson. How are you gentlemen today?
Doing great. How are y'all doing?
Awesome.
Well, again, we're excited by the progress that's being made, and start seeing a building actually coming to shape at the Belton High School with the orchestra addition, and just amazing progress is being made on Lake Belton High School. But the man with all the details here will give you the update.
What did I just do?
We're on a half slide.
They seem a little off today.
Okay, if you want to go to the first photo. So the first photos here are from our last presentation, just looking at the overall campus, the track having the asphalt on it, the interior progress
have
at
it on the list.
the dining commons, which is the center photo on the bottom. And if you'll go to the next slide, please. So over the last couple months, they've really been working on the exterior veneer. They have made a lot of progress on the metal panel installation going around the building. We're probably 95% complete on that. They've basically been finishing out a couple pieces on the Performing Arts Center, and then this bottom left-hand photo here is actually at the athletic entrance, and that's the last part that they're finishing up. It's a different color that's going on those slanted pieces, and that is where the Lake Belton Bronco logo with the LBHS will be put on that side. And so that's the main entrance coming on the athletic side. The other two photos are down on the south side of the building. They are the Wing L Classroom Edition, and you can see both the metal panel and the brick and the limestone have basically been completed on there. They just have a few areas that they're buttoning up on that side. If we can go to the next slide. Moving on to the interiors, they're making a lot of progress getting the finishes up. Three of the photos here that I'm highlighting are some of the transparency and openness in the facility. So the Super Lab, we've got these little, I'm going to say 8-inch pop-outs that have a no mullion glass that allows you to look in. On the second level, it looks into the Super Labs. And on the first level, there's about 3 of them. And actually, as you walk by, you'll be able to look into the culinary arts area. So it gives you transparency to see the students interacting as you're walking down the hallways. The collaboration space, which is up on the left side, those are in the classroom wings. They pop out into the hallway, allowing for students to go into these, basically a glass cube, have conversations, do some studying, and it gives you the visibility so that you're not always in the classroom or the hallway, but you have some other places to interact. And then on the dining commons in the top left, they've really made progress on the drywall installation. If you can see basically on the left side of that image, they have the drywall all the way down that main commons area. So you've got this long view from the main entrance all the way down to the end of the area L classroom wing that you get all the drywall on. Paint's going up on the one side, and now they're getting ready to kind of finish some of the finishes and drywall in the dining commons.
How many students does the collaboration space hold?
It's probably, it depends on how many you want it. It can be anywhere from 1 or 2 all the way up to probably 8 or 10.
8 or
The
10.
idea was in the collaborative spaces between the neighborhoods that you really have a choice. So we have kind of individual study carrel areas. That's kind of more like a conference room area. And then you just have the large open space that could hold multiple classes at one time.
Great, thank you.
And then kind of going to the exterior, just highlighting a couple things, is at the main entrance, they have the brick going up on the columns. They'll finish with the metal panel around the soffits. And then we have the football bleachers that, last time I looked, they were 95% complete. They're basically just lacking the press box going up on that side. In the next couple of weeks, they'll move over to putting the bleachers on the softball and baseball side. Next slide, please. As you guys talked about, the proposed changes, they have just the 2 allowances from the last time that we have going into owner's contingency for the batting cages and the acoustical panels. Are there any questions on the high school project?
Board have any questions? Nope.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then Belton Orchestra. So the first slide is just kind of recapping the structure going down. They were pouring sidewalks. They had the slab and had the rebar coming out of the ground. And then on to the next slide.
Just a little CMU going up in that one photo in comparison to these.
So basically, over the last month, they have been putting up all the CMU around the building. It is a grouted every 16 inches, so it's a reinforced masonry. You have the rebar installation that we have in the top 2 photos of putting them in at the very top bond beam. They've got bond beams that are below the windows, above the windows, and then as you can see, they're getting ready on the bottom left where we have the wood framing around the windows. They were getting ready to put the waterproofing on, which they have started. And the intent is that with the steel that's in the bottom right that just arrived, that they will have the steel on the building, the roof deck up, and roofing, and basically have everything done except for the exterior masonry veneer and closed up by the first of the year, moving on to the inside and getting the construction in the existing spaces done, get that demolition, and then be able to finish the exterior as they go along. Are there any questions on the orchestra?
I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Okay. Next item is consider, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding completion of capital improvements projects. Dr. Robert Mueller. Good evening, Dr. Mueller.
Good evening. Mr. Taggart did a fine job of reviewing the capital projects list, so I'll just kind of recap. That list represents prioritized items across pretty much all of our facilities. Priority 1 were those things that we consider most urgent, followed by priority 2 and priority 3. If you look at the campuses, every campus has priority 1 items represented. Most have priority 1 and 2. 2 of the campuses, Miller Heights and Southwest, only have priority 1 items. If you total up the dollar amounts on all the projects, it totals up to about $6.7 million. If you look at the 2 priority items that we're recommending that come first, it totals to 3.295, I believe. $3,295,027. And so we're asking that you make a budget amendment, which is one of the future items, to approve $3.5 million to address these items.
Is there any further discussion or questions from the board? Okay. The administrative recommendation reads approve the Facilities Committee recommendation to address prioritized capital improvement items. Is there a motion to approve? Dr. Montgomery, is there a second? Mr. Taggart? All in favor, please raise your hand. That passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is consider, discuss, and take action regarding action regarding budget amendment number 1, 2019-2020. Ms. Jennifer Land.
Good evening again.
Good evening again.
So this is our first budget amendment of the year. And as you can see, there's not a lot, but the primary purpose is to show you that we are transferring funds out of the general fund, and we will be establishing or transferring that to a capital projects fund to fund the items that Mr. Taggart spoke so eloquently about previously, as well as Dr. Mueller.
Is there any discussion or questions? The administrative recommendation is to approve amendments as presented. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Taggart, is there a second? Mr. Norwood, all in favor, please raise your hand. That passes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, crew. You did a great job.
Dr. Robert Mueller, he's going to come back up on our next item and talk to us about fencing, the district fencing project. And we'll talk about some action thereafter.
Yes, we went out for requests for proposals for fencing around the district. The fencing determination needs were made by Doug Taylor in conjunction with David Bennett and the campus principals. And so they looked at each campus. There were 7 sites that are being recommended for additional fencing. Those include Charter Oak, High Point, Chisholm Trail, Pyrtle, Southwest Elementary, South Belton Middle School, and Belton High School. I think the total linear feet is about 3,000 linear feet. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to try to answer those.
Board have any questions or discussion?
Was the primary reason for this just more security?
Yes. Yes. Yes, primarily it has to do with safety and security of those campuses. It's kind of related to hardening our campuses.
Any further questions or comments?
I have just one, right? So for the fencing related to Charter Oak, I mean, do we have any money left from the construction of that school that can offset the cost of the fence, or do we have to really take that out of our, wherever it was coming from, the the general revenue budget?
We actually do. We could pull it from some of the FF&E that was left over from that project. I will tell you, on Charter Oak specifically, the diagram that you show in your board packet might be altered slightly, and so the cost of that may come down quite a bit.
Any further question or comments? The administrative recommendation is to approve the administrative recommendation and authorize the interim superintendent to negotiate and execute a contract with Goldsmith Construction Company for the district fencing project. Is there a motion to approve? Mr. Norwood, is there a second? Mr. Alcozer, all in favor, please raise your hand. That passes. Thank you. Next item on our agenda, Mr. Todd Schiller is going to talk to us about administrative employees and the hiring thereof.
Yes, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
Well, tonight I have the pleasure of recommending an auditorium director by the name of Kimberly Davies.
Welcome.
Stand up over there. They'll take your picture. So Kimberly comes to us from Leander ISD. She has a master's degree from the University of Texas. She's got about 10 years of experience. During that time, she has served as an assistant athletic director in Leander ISD, and then spent some time coaching the swim team in Leander ISD. During that time coaching, she coached two state championship teams. National would be great, but two state championship teams in the 2015 and 2016 school years. And she has she was voted 5A Coach of the Year during those 2 years as well. And she has produced multiple division athletes, and we are excited to be able to work with her here in Belton ISD.
Well, welcome to BISD. We're excited to see what you're going to bring to us, and we're excited to see what we can bring to you. So we're going to take a picture, and then we're going to take some action. How about that? Now we'll make you official. Is there a motion to approve the recommendation as presented? Okay. So Mr. Taggart makes the motion. Is there a second? Dr. Montgomery, all approved, please raise your hand. Welcome again to BISD. Okay. Mr. Morgan, come talk to us about middle school intra-district early transfer process timeline for 2021.
Sure, and it's a pleasure to get to speak with you tonight over a topic that we've already spent some time with, but hopefully this presentation will give a little more clarification and a little more context into some of the things that we've been discussing and some of the things that we're wanting to do moving forward. I'd like to thank you, and I'd also like to thank the policy committee for the work that we were able to do together, and to Mr. Alcozer for presenting tonight and the board workshop as we discuss these topics. We would like to talk about transfer policy. We would like to talk about the actual presentation that we're going to give to our middle school parents next week. That's going to be similar to the three presentations that we did for our high school parents back in September. Just as a brief reminder, and it is confusing sometimes because there are different terms that are used, but we will be talking in this presentation and in the presentations next week about intra-district transfers, which is guided by FDB local, and that is the transfers between schools, and not inter-district transfers, which are guided by FDA local, which are out of district. And I think that's where some of the confusion comes in, is we all use double language. Intra-district also means out of district. Intra-district means between schools. But in the case of what we're talking about right now is middle school intra-district transfers, which are guided by FDB local. There was, to review again, is that we did have attendance boundary considerations that came about as the process concluded in 2018 and was approved in January of 2019. And I tried to make these points as succinct as possible, but we did want boundaries that would last 5 years. We did want to keep subdivisions together as much as possible, and I think that's where some of the issues come in sometimes, is that maybe our elementary communities don't stay together, but the subdivisions do, and we're going to work on those the best we can. Reduce overcrowding. I think that has to be a top priority. When you build new schools that we've built, you definitely don't want to put yourself in situations where you're over capacity. Efficient transportation routes, natural boundary lines to the greatest extent possible, and to present pure feeder patterns to the greatest extent possible. So with the opening of Charter Oak, our new elementary attendance boundaries went into effect this year in August of 2019, and then in the August of 2020, the new attendance boundaries for Belton Middle School and Lake Belton High School will go into effect. The administration worked very closely with Templeton Demographics and a committee that consisted of parents, community members, teachers, administrators to study new attendance boundaries. The committee met 5 times between August of 2018 and concluded on January 7th, 2019. 3 public forums were also held to solicit further community feedback on the attendance boundaries that were developed. And then on January 14th, 2019, they were approved by the board. Shown on the map, and it's to the level of detail, is the attendance boundaries for the 4 BISD middle school campuses. And that's what we're going to talk about as we enter this transfer process. There were some considerations for intra-district transfers. Like I said earlier, its policy is established and governed by FDB. And then also it's always important to remember that for any transfer that is approved, that BISD does not provide transportation services for those students. So if a student is approved an intra-district transfer, they would be responsible for their family or themselves to find their own way to and from school. Now, the middle school intra-district transfer period is going to open on October 28th and go through November 15th, 2019. This will only apply to current 5th, 6th, and 7th graders because they will be our middle school students next year. In the case that a student would apply, this would be a case, and this would be where a student applies to attend a zone, a middle school outside of the attendance zone in which they are residing in which they would be zoned to attend. And I would like to remind you, and we'll talk about FDB a little more later in the meeting, but the criteria established in FDB basically says that, number one, to consider a transfer, the program needs of the student must be met. There must be available space at the campus that they're applying for the transfer. We can consider any extraordinary family considerations. We have to consider UIL rules and the consequences of those, and then we would also look at the attendance and discipline history of the student. So for those criteria must be met in order to even consider approving a transfer. One thing that's important to remember, and this is where we get into our expectations, is that as BISD, as we establish these attendance boundaries, that the number one expectation has to be that students will attend the school that they're zoned to attend. That's how we set enrollments. That's how we set capacities. That's how we set staff. I mean, we're already way into trying to meet the staffing needs for Lake Belton High School next fall, for Belton Middle School next fall. And when you meet those staffing needs, you have to base it off of what your projected enrollments are going to be. So the first expectation will and has to be that students will attend the school that they're zoned to attend. And for the most part, that will be true. Also, we have to expect that transfer requests based on preference for particular staff, campus, or duplicated programs will not be considered. So if we have a program that's offered at all 4 middle schools, then we would not be able to grant a transfer based on the request of that program at one of the 4 middle schools. And that gets tough. You get students who may have had siblings who had a staff member at a campus, and they love that. I mean, that staff member has become a family friend, and they want their younger siblings to have that same staff member. Maybe it's a coach or a band director or an English teacher or a cheer sponsor, and those are very, very tough requests But for the district to work through new attendance boundaries and to be able to adequately staff and plan, then we have to really limit those types of requests for particular staff, particular campuses, or duplicated programs. Also, it becomes very, very difficult to consider grandfather requests and legacy requests. And we defined those at the prior board meeting when we were talking about high school considerations. But a grandfather request would be a student be allowed to remain at a campus simply because they've attended that campus previously. So I attended 6th grade at South Belton Middle School, and I had a great experience. But as a 7th grader, I'm zoned to Belton Middle School because of my neighborhood, and it becomes very difficult to plan and handle the needs of our students if we consider on a large-scale grandfather requests. Now, where it gets tricky is if you approve one, you have to approve all of them. And that's why we say that as a general rule, we will not consider grandfather requests or legacy requests. So the biggest thing that we would really consider for middle school transfers would be, going back to policy, would be the extraordinary family considerations that could possibly come up. There's also, if you start approving out-of-zone transfers at the middle school level, when those students become high school students, you potentially get in a lot of situations where students are attending out of zone. And when you get kids that attend out of zone at the high school, then you have UIL complications as well. Not as much at middle school because you're never talking about varsity eligibility, but so you have a student that lives in one zone, he goes to a middle school on the other zone, and then at high school goes to that high school, but what if he wants to go back to his zoned high school at some point? I mean, you get into some really sticky situations. So the fewer of those that we have, the more protected our students and our programs are going to be at a later time. And I think the biggest thing, and why are we doing this transfer policy now? Why did we do the high school in September, and why are we doing the middle school now? Because we want to be transparent. We want people to know the rules, we want people to know what the expectations are, and we want to give them plenty of time to plan accordingly. And then the other thing is we want to be fair. I mean, we want to be fair. We don't want to have applications come in, and then after the applications come in, we say, well, here are the rules that we're going to play by. We want to be fair, and we want to be transparent, and we want people to know why we're making the decisions we're making. And it's obviously, it's in the best interest of the district in planning and staffing, but it's also in the best interest of the students to eliminate those types of long-term potential problems that we can get into. We do have a timeline, and I've given you the abbreviated version here. Tomorrow, we have a Skylert letter prepared that will be sent out to all 5th, 6th, and 7th grade parents. It will kind of detail the process, just as we did with our 8th and 9th grade parents. And it will also make sure that they're aware of just the base guidelines that we're going to follow, and also that we do have parent meetings coming up on October 28th and 29th. We're going to invite all of our middle school administration or counselors to come to those meetings. You guys would be welcome to come as well. But we will have a meeting on October 28th at North Belton Middle School, and we'll have a meeting on October 29th here back in the Pittenger Fine Arts Center, and both of those meetings will start at 6 o'clock. And we will present the information that you're seeing tonight, and then we will stay as long as we need to stay to answer questions and discuss parents on a one-on-one basis or in a group setting. And those were really productive meetings, I felt like, at the high school level. I felt like even if parents were not particularly ecstatic about the outcome of the conversation, they understood, and they felt like we had a chance to hear their concerns. And then we will open the middle school application period on October 28th, and we will take those applications all the way through November 15th. So that concludes the portion about middle school transfers and kind of what's coming up in the next 3 weeks on those. I would entertain any questions at this time that you may have, and then I will go into just a little more context on the policy recommendations and on the one-time specialty items for 2020-21 that we're going to consider.
Does the board have any questions or comments?
Yeah, there's two meetings, one October the 20th, one on 29th. Is the 28th at North Belton?
The 28th at North Belton.
Okay.
And the 29th will be back here.
All right.
At 6 p.m.
And board members, if you can attend, we would love to have you, because it's a great show of unity that this is not falling upon one person's shoulders, but that everybody is on board with this, because this is going to be a real change for some of our community.
Can we get meeting invites so that way we can mark our calendars? Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on, Mr. Morgan, to talking about changes to FDA local second reading.
And I have 5 or 6 slides that will kind of hit the highlights of those, and it will kind of move us into our next agenda item. And so FDA and FDB local, and FDA, as we stated, is the policy that guides intra-district, and FDB is the policy that does intra-district. And one of the things that as we got into some policy considerations, and as we were preparing for the policy committee meeting on September 13th, we found really that FDA was fairly lacking. It didn't have an established criteria. It did not have a revocation process listed. It did not have how we were going to handle employees' children, and it also didn't really have an assignment process by how you assigned campuses. So there were some real considerations of things that, as we were going to be fair and do what's in the best interest, we needed it in writing. So that was one of the reasons why we worked so hard to come up with some FDA. And then there was also ways that we wanted FDA and FDB to match as most as possible. I mean, when you really are talking about approving transfers, you kind of want the criteria to be the same. You kind of want the revoking process to match as well. So the first thing, as Mr. Alcozer mentioned earlier, kind of to get anywhere close to alignment with local Bell County schools or local comparable school districts is we did recommend, and it was approved by the committee, to discount inter-district transfer fees for children of active duty military by 50%. So for a secondary or a high school student, that would reduce that fee to $500 per year. For a elementary or middle school student, it would reduce that fee to $375 per year. It would be noted that all other criteria would have to be met. I mean, we'll still have to be under our 4% cap. They'll still have to have the attendance and behavior that we require, and they would still have to meet all of the other requirements that we're proposing. But we would do a 50% reduction to support and facilitate that relationship, that strong relationship that we have with Fort Hood, and welcoming their families and their students here if they choose to pursue an educational career at Belton ISD. Closed campuses, this is new language that had to be put into both policies. And basically, the closed campuses would be for all new transfers when a campus meets a preset attendance threshold. Our initial thoughts on this, as we discussed, would be looking at around the 96% capacity. I think there probably could be considerations for working with our demographer. If you have a campus that has a very high construction rate that is expecting a high yield, that threshold may be a little lower when you want to close that campus so you don't get over capacity quicker. In some of the older neighborhoods with not as much new construction or as many sales going on, you may could set that threshold slightly higher because you could probably handle some additional transfer to give a more robust enrollment to that campus. So those are some things, within the next few weeks as we meet with our demographer, we really anticipate needing to have this in place by the time that we open elementary enrollment after the holidays, because elementary enrollment is where we'll have the biggest need for closing campuses to make sure that we don't get over. We had 5 campuses this year, as y'all saw in September, where we had to apply for waivers. And we also had 4 campuses where we had to move students. So we would be really conscious of trying not to put those in a situation by accepting too many intra or intra-district transfers moving forward. Allowing district employees to request a transfer for their child to any district. As we studied other districts' transfer policies, it became pretty clear that the districts, to the greatest extent, were really trying to protect and take care of their employees. And this also eliminates situations we've gotten into where policy FDA didn't address employees' children at all, and policy FDB basically said that the child would attend the campus closest to or at the campus where the employee worked. Now, what we found when we started researching that is for a lot of cases, that was the case. For a lot of cases, you may have had a parent that worked at one elementary school, their student transferred there, and then 3 years later, they went to a different school and did not choose to take their student with them because they had been at a certain school. And so there were exceptions to that. So in following along with what schools like Georgetown and College Station and even some of our local districts are doing, is allowing district employees to request a transfer for their child to any district campus. Now, obviously, there's other considerations. They still have to meet the criteria. You have to consider closed campuses and some of those types of things. So we have to be careful, but that would be the implication in FDA and FDB local would be that the district employee be able to request that. We think it would also be a good draw for the retention of quality employees, which is one of our district goals. And then this is one that's a little bit, because it's never been addressed before either, is inter-district campus assignment. And we spoke about this at the meeting that, you know, really when you talk about inter-district campus assignment, you really have three routes that you can take on this. And the route that we've recommended and that we worked through with the committee is that approved transfer students be assigned to the campus in closest proximity to his or her home address. If that campus cannot accommodate the transfer due to space, the student will be placed at the campus in the next closest proximity until a campus with available space is found. Now, what this does, currently at the elementary levels, an inter-district transfer can request any campus they choose. So this kind of protects some of our campuses against a large influx of inter-district transfers, because they all choose one campus or the other campus or another campus. It also puts students in a path where they will go to middle school with the same students they go to elementary with, and high school with the same students they go to middle school with, so you don't get the, if everyone's funneled to a certain middle school, and then at high school they have to go to a certain high school, or if they go to the one that they're zoned nearest to, it eliminates all the peer group breakup that can happen sometimes if you have transfers all over the district. Also, it eliminates the potential or the reality that out-of-district students get school choice when in-district students don't. So by sending them to the nearest school to proximity, there is no perception or reality that out-of-district students are getting to choose which campus they go to, when our Belton tax-paying students and their families don't get any choice in the matter.
So Mike, can you speak to the last sentence there, until a campus with available space is found? Mm-hmm. What happens when that space is found? Is that
they would go to that school. And it really, we feel like this will let us keep kids on the side of town that will path them to the high school that's closest to their home. So for instance, if a person lived, let's say they lived just across Highway 36, and they were in the Moody attendance zone, and they applied for an inter-district transfer to Belton. So, and they were an elementary age student, fourth grade. So that student would obviously, the first option for that student would be, we would try to send that student to High Point. Now, if High Point were full, if they were a closed campus or at over capacity, then they would go to the next closest campus, which in this case would be Tarver, I believe. So if Tarver had space, then that student would be zoned to Tarver. If Tarver didn't have space, then it would go to the next closest school, which would either be Lakewood or Pirtle. And so if those campuses were both closed, then it would go to Charter Oak. So basically you would have a student, we would have 5 options to send that student on that side of town, where they would still go to the middle school and high school with all the other students that lived in that proximity. So that's where, now if a student lived in the, on the Temple side and they're closest to Tarver, then we would just, and it all in proximity. So whatever the map says is next closest proximity, we keep going in that route until we find the one that has space for that student. And basically it would be the nearest non-closed campus is what it would amount to.
Hey, Mike, all inter-district high school students go to Belton High School, correct?
Well, the first two groups will. The current 9th graders and the current 8th graders. Because those students have been funneled to South Belton, we want them to know that they can, and we want them to go to Belton High School because that's been their peer group. The students that are 7th grade and below, we would like to go ahead and send them to closest proximity and get them acclimated and get them to the same kids they're going to be going to high school with.
Okay.
So the current ninth graders and eighth graders, because of the funneling that we've done for them, we would like for them to stay at Belton High School because those are the kids that they've gone to school with by our placement and not by their choice. And then the interdistrict cap, we do feel like that the 4% has been the Belton standard, and we recommend that remain the Belton standard. This will be affecting FDA local because it affects interdistrict transfers, although that 4% number will live in administrative guidelines and not in policy. We're advised not to put the actual numerical bases or what we decide. So that will be in administrative guidelines and it'll be local guidelines, but the policy that it governs is FDA local. So we will not exceed 4%. And in a historical basis, Dr. Battershell mentioned earlier, we've been averaging between 400 and 420 interdistrict transfers per year, and this has been for several years. That's been the number, the average number. So what's happened is our average number of transfers stays the same, but our enrollment continues to grow. So what has actually happened is that intradistrict number has shrunk, and it was 3.8% 3 years ago, 3.6% 2 years ago, and 3.4% this year. So we're actually at a pretty good spot as far as where we're hitting. And obviously, as a student services department, it's up to us to make sure that the students who apply for interdistrict transfers meet our criteria and our students that will come in and do a good job and be productive members of Belton ISD. And so the last thing and final thing with this were the special considerations, and Mr. Alcoster touched on these in the workshop. Number one is we will work with Templeton Demographics to try to eliminate perpetual transfer considerations. And the two that we really recognize that we see on the horizon are the Hook students, whom I mentioned earlier, range from about 10 to about 24 students per grade level. And then there are some Charter Oak students, a very small group that live on this side of the Leon, that are Charter Oak in elementary and then back to Belton Middle School, and we would like to find a sustainable place for them where we don't get in perpetual transfer requests, because we're going to get them every year. I mean, if they go 6 years to an elementary school and then a small group splits from their peer group, then those are going to be perpetual transfer considerations, and we're going to try to get away from those if we can. Allow North Belton Middle School North Belton 8th grade Hook students to request a transfer to Lake Belton for 2021. I believe that number is around 14 students, and they were Sparta kids up for 3 years. They were Lakewood kids for 3 years. They've been at North Belton for 3 years, and just such a small group that is not truly keeping them with a peer group to split those 14 off. So we will allow them the opportunity to transfer to Lake Belton. And then, like we mentioned earlier, current 8th and 9th grade interdistrict transfer students who have been assigned to South Belton Middle School will attend BHS. Current 6th and 7th grade interdistrict students will be assigned to home campus. And then obviously any new 8th and 9th grade any new 8th and 9th grade students who apply would go back to our policy, which says closest proximity. And moving forward, that's the end of the presentation. And any more discussion items or questions, and then we can move right into the two agenda items, which would be to discuss and take action on the revisions to FDA and FDB.
Does the board have any? Go ahead.
I do real quick, and it's actually not a question. It's not a question at all. It's a comment. This has been a very long process, and for all of you who have been involved, and the policy people who just sat in on it, but especially Coach Morgan, thank you. This has been going on for a long time, and I've probably heard more about transfers in the last year than anything else that we've done, because it's a very personal thing and people feel it. And on a one-on-one basis, their reasons are always good. But the fact is, we had to set a standard that we could grow with and that we could go forward, because the onesies here and there, they add up over time, and we're going to end up with a problem. And I just thank y'all for putting together a framework that 5, 10, 15 years from now, it's already there. The standard is set. People know what it is. It didn't exist before y'all did it, and I'm sure y'all are so tired of FDB and FDA that you never want to hear them again. But just thank you. Thank you very much for the work that's been going on and finally bringing this, around. It is greatly appreciated. Just wanted to say thank you.
And, along those lines, I mean, I'm an example of somebody who's going to be impacted, right? So I've got a sixth grader at North Belton Middle School who's going to go to Lake Belton High School Lake Belton Middle School next year, right? And we're rolling with it, right? So, I think it's important that we're, going along with it ourselves too. So, I think it's going to be a great change. He's going to move with his peer group, and he's not going to be impacted.
Awesome.
So,
Okay, any other comments or questions? All right, Mike, you can go ahead and get us started with the FDA local formal discussion so we can take action on that.
Okay, and as presented, and as we've discussed, and I'll just hit the highlights once again, just to make sure, but in FDA local, we've added a criteria for approval process. We've added the clause about district employees and defined how the district employees are going to be assigned. We added the revocation process, which did not exist before. And basically, those are the reasons for which, we feel like if we're going to revoke a transfer, that's a pretty serious thing. And we want people to know up front what the reasons we might revoke a transfer for. And that's and it actually says we reserve the right to revoke the transfer for the following reasons. And one thing that we did put on there that we picked up from several people and we briefly talked about is number 6 is if provided false information on the interdistrict transfer form. I think that's important that if we're going to go and we're going to approve a transfer, that it's important that people be honest with us whenever they're filling out their paperwork and when they're filling out their forms. So we would reserve the right to revoke a transfer if it were found that people were not honest or they provided false information on their transfer form. Campus assignment, which is new, that was not in the policy before, which we just discussed. Transportation, which we have discussed, that it shall not be provided for any interdistrict transfers. And then the idea of closed campuses, that we want to use campus capacities as a way to annually review and decide if we can take any more new transfers in that campus. And then obviously the military discount, which would be active duty member of the military would receive a 50% discount. So I would entertain any further discussion or any action that would be taken on approval of policy FDA.
And this has been through TASB Policy Services for review.
Okay. Does the board have any further questions or discussion on this? It is the administrative recommendation that it's recommended that the policies approved at policy committee and submitted be adopted. Is there a motion to approve as recommended? Dr. Montgomery, is there a second? Mr. Alcozer, all approved, please raise your hand. Thank you. We'll move on to FDB.
So policy FDB, which is really the policy we were talking about tonight, it did not have nearly the amount of change necessary that FDA had because it was pretty much outlined. The criteria was already established. The only thing we did is we took TASB's recommendation to move the unacceptable attendance to a subpoint by itself instead of being included in the student handbook in item 1, and then included the information about false information would be provided would be grounds for a revocation. We did restate the district employee that they may request an interdistrict transfer to their district campus, to any district campus. And then we also did put in the clause about closed campuses, which would apply for intradistrict and intradistrict transfers. So not as much here, really just kind of a little bit of a revamp of some of the highlights of FDB. So it would, at this time, we would like to answer any additional questions or let y'all discuss the action that you would like to take on policy FDB.
Does the board have any additional questions or comments?
Dr. Batishall, you mentioned that we had TASB look at these policies. And when TASB reviews these things, they review them for compliance with state and federal law.
That is correct.
So that they give us their blessing so we can move forward.
Blessing or revisions.
Right.
And sometimes it's just clarification, and so they sent that back to us, and so we put their recommendations into this. So you will see the recommendations as part of this.
Any other discussion or comments?
Oh, and I want to add, they were really good. They turned it around within 24 hours, so they did a really good job. So your money was well worth it.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve as recommended? Mr. Taggart, is there a second? Dr. Montgomery, all approve, please raise your hand. That passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is curriculum and instruction. Our presenter is going to be Lauren Brisbane. We're going to get an update on English learners.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm delighted to be able to share with you all today an update on our English learner program. A couple of our programs. Okay, so first things first, we'll start with program enrollment. You'll see over the past 5 years, there has been a flux in our enrollment of English learners. While our overall population is growing, because our English learner population isn't growing, our overall percentage of English learners is going down. So we've been hovering between 7% and 6% for the last 5 years. So the first step in the identification process is the home language survey. When parents show up to register their kiddos, they're asked 2 questions. One question is, which language is most spoken in the home, and which language does your child speak? And in Belton ISD, we have 35 languages represented in our district. 90% of our English learners have a home language of Spanish. I just think it's very interesting in just little old Central Texas that we have 35 languages being spoken in the homes. That brings us to program type. There are 2 different bilingual programs in operation in Belton ISD. The first one is dual language immersion one way. And dual language is made up of 100% of English learners, with the goal of developing full biliteracy and bilingualism. And this is an additive model, meaning that we add to the student's home language, we add English. So at the end, the student comes out with outcome as speaking both English and Spanish with proficiency. The other bilingual program that we have been implementing is the transitional early exit. And the goal of a transitional early exit is to become competent in English only. So that's what we call a subtractive model. Right now we have 2 programs for our ESL programs across the district. We have ESL content-based and ESL pullout. And we have ESL services on all 16 of our campuses. For our bilingual, I failed to mention our 4 campuses that serve our bilingual students are Bex, Southwest, Chisholm Trail, and Charter Oak. So hiring highly qualified teachers is critical to our student success. And as a district, we remain really competitive by providing stipends. For our bilingual teachers, they receive a $2,000 sign-on stipend when they are hired. They also receive an annual stipend of $3,000. For our ESL teachers, we reimburse for the cost of a passing ESL test, and we also reimburse teachers for the cost of adding that certification to their teaching certificate. Professional development. Our teachers are our most valuable asset, so we want to ensure that they have the knowledge and skills to best serve our students. So in addition to the professional development that we provide all teachers, we provide targeted support for our bilingual and ESL teachers and campuses. One of the most exciting ones this past year was Seidlitz's education book study. It was a 3-part series on the book 7 Steps to an Interactive Language-Rich Classroom. And this is a sheltered instruction strategy. We had a lot of success. It's really simple because it's 7 steps. There are several different sheltered instruction models out there, but this one we really grabbed onto, and the teachers implemented it, and we saw some really good gains. We were able to send some administrators to a What's Working for ELs in Texas conference, as well as consulting with Calidad Ed They are a bilingual education consulting firm out of San Antonio and work with districts like Northeast ISD and surrounding San Antonio areas. We also did some extensive PD on curriculum writing using the Spanish language arts TEKS, and we provided 2 different ESL preparation academies this past year. So that brings us to our student performance on TELPAS. TELPAS is the Texas English Language Proficiency Assessment System, and it assesses the English language proficiency standards, much like STAR assesses the TEKS. When we look at our progress, the chart on the right, you see by grade level, you see the state percent of progress, of EL progress, and then our district. And so while the state was at 32, we were, as a district, we're at 31% for TELPAS progress for our ELs. Some grades we are a little bit higher than the state, some grades we are below, but overall we're hanging right there with the state. When we look at the results, these are included overall in our Domain 3 when we talk about our accountability system. As you may recall, Ms. Dean went over, reviewed these with you all, and our overall Domain 3 score was a B, and TELPAS is 10% of this score. And as a district, we received no points for this target progress score because it's 36 and we were at 31. And so while we received no points for that, the state didn't either if they were being assessed under their system. So the TELPAS target was met by only one campus, and that was Southwest Elementary. And Denise Bell is a Region 12 employee, and she made a comment to Vicki Dean that Southwest TELPAS EL progress was 46%, and she had not seen a campus with that kind of growth with their students in the region, and to her knowledge, anywhere that other regions that she has spoken to at service centers. So TELPAS progress did help us keep out of the improvement required at Southwest.
Awesome.
Dr. Thomas and Dr. Collier, they are 2 top researchers in this field, and they have conducted research on various types of education programs for English learners. This is a chart from their research from 2001 to 2009, and it's considered their seminal work in the field. And in this graph, it shows us that over time, students in a dual language program outperform their peers. So in essence, a dual language program, when you're adding a second language to a student's home language, it's an enrichment opportunity. And by 12th grade, those dual language, the blue diamond, those are those dual language kiddos. They're outperforming even the native English speakers when implemented, with fidelity. So our path, a few slides ago, I outlined the 2 types of programs. Right now, this is our first year implementing dual language, and we have that in pre-K, K, and 1. Because instruction is meant to shore up a student's native language, we needed to be able to roll that process up. So in the years to come, these kids will add 2nd grade next year as these kids grow, and by the year 2024, we'll have K-5 dual language, and transitional early exit will be phased out. We engaged a bilingual education focus group through the process of reviewing the data by different grade levels. We also read all the literature on best practices in bilingual education, and we consulted with some of the experts in the field. Dr. Monica Lara, she is a consultant for Seidlitz Education. She's an author and consultant on the national level. She came and walked classrooms with us and helped us really come to that conclusion that our students in our community, dual language education would best serve their needs. And so we began working on that framework for dual language. And we ended with a 90-10 model. And that means the year you begin dual language, the percentage of language spoken. So 90% of the instruction is in Spanish and 10% is in English. So at pre-K and K, 90% is Spanish because they're still really working on securing up and being proficient in their home language, which is Spanish. And then they have a lot of English language development time. But as you see, when we go through the years, first grade, we're at 80-20, second grade, 70-30, third grade, 60-40, and then by fourth grade, it's 50-50. And the hope is when they exit fifth grade, they are fully proficient in both English and Spanish. And just to end, these are some of our wonderful graduates when they went back to Southwest for their graduate walk. And we just know that the benefits of bilingualism go beyond the ability to communicate in another language. Bilingualism gives kids a broader perspective of their world. So we're really proud of them and the work that our kids do and that our teachers do. Are there any questions that you have for me?
Great report. Go ahead, Dr. Montgomery.
So, I mean, I'm very excited about the program, but are you going to give us some data points along the way this year so we know how it's going?
I would love to. Okay. We can do that.
Thank you. Mr. Floor?
So I got to tell you, this is an area I don't know a whole lot about, right? So I may have some pretty basic questions here, right? So the program's rolled out in 4 schools, right? So Beck, Southwest, Chisholm Trail, and Charter Oak. So what's a day in the life of those students look like, right? Is it throughout every class, right? We're doing the 90-10 split right now?
So in pre-K, kinder,
pre-K,
and
yeah.
first. So those are the only 3 grade levels that we are implementing dual language.
Okay.
Because we have to do so much on their home language end. You know, our kids who are in 2nd grade and 5th grade have not grown up in this program. So to just all of a sudden put them in, 60% of your instruction is going to be in Spanish when that hasn't been the focus from pre-K, K, and 1. That's why we're rolling dual language up and kind of phasing out the transition early exit program.
Okay.
So a day in the life of a pre-K-er is they come to school and they learn the Spanish alphabet. They're reading or they're listening to authentic Spanish literature from authors. They are nursery rhymes in Spanish. They're learning Spanish just like our kiddos are learning English at the pre-K level. All that oral listening, speaking stuff. And so they do have some English language development time, that 10%. That's a lot of sing songs, chants, big books, nursery rhymes in English, so they start getting an ear and hear that oral language. But yeah, it's really exciting. I keep telling myself I want to learn Spanish, so I'll go sit in a kindergarten class and try to learn with them.
So what does that look, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to add to that too. We are doing bilingual programs, dual language one way, which means that we will only serve children that come to us speaking Spanish. So there are other districts, other places around the country, and we have had requests for students whose home language is English to participate in a dual language program. We're not there yet. We might be at some point in time, but right now we need to best serve our children that come with Spanish. So I do want to clarify that. And then like Lauren was saying, these children at the 4 campuses are served through a homeroom that is a bilingual teacher. So they're just like a gen ed student, a regular student with English background would be served in a general homeroom.
Gotcha.
And board members, if you're interested in touring one of these, this might be a cool program to look at. So if you're interested, let me know. Just email me and we can set up something for a group of board members, because this is a very innovative, creative program. It's real cutting edge.
Okay. Good.
Is there any kind of program that we do with the parents to work with them, like during the day, where they can come sit in on some of the dual language stuff, trying to get them where they're more proficient to try to help their kid at home with maybe their homework and stuff?
That's a great point, Mr. Taggart. We have ESL classes, adult ESL classes for our parents every Tuesday evening up here at admin. Next semester in the spring, we're going to actually host that at Southwest Elementary to maybe to create some more interest since it will be right there with their community. We had a informational meeting in August where we talked about the change and the why and the benefits, and where our plan is to continue to have those throughout the year to get parents, to give them more information and tips on what to do at home, and just, you know, it's a shift for them because some of our parents say, well, no, I just want them to, you know, learn English and be, and we say, no, it's such a benefit to learn both. I wish I was bilingual, and so myself, and this is just an incredible opportunity for kiddos to have the chance to learn both and leave as a fifth grader bilingual.
One thing I'll add, we didn't, Lauren didn't cover it, but something that's new with the state is that students that show proficiency from bilingual campuses in the elementary can actually earn high school credit for their foreign language. So that's an option down the path for our fifth grade students when we get there, that they can earn high school credit based on their knowledge of Spanish. For us, it's Spanish. For other districts, it's many languages.
Could one of you comment on you said something about the TELPAS helping our overall rating. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? I wanted to understand that point.
Yes, I will. So you may recall there was a time when we believed Southwest would have an F as their overall rating. They had an F in Domain 1, a D in Domain 2. We were holding out for final pieces of data. As you know, with that system, it's complex, and you don't know every piece of data that's factored into that system until right before those ratings are official. In regard to Southwest, one piece of data that we did not know was the TELPAS rating, and the TELPAS rating affected Domain 3. When their scores came in as high as they did, they earned those 10% points that sent them over and moved them from an F to a D. And that is what changed their rating, and it was at the very last minute. Many of you know my reaction to that. So we're very proud of them and those TELPAS scores. That's as you know, that's 90%, I believe, my numbers are correct, Hispanic, and about 33% of the students took that TELPAS test. That test is in the spring.
The window begins in February, and it ends around spring break. In the past, we have teachers have rated theirs on a holistic rating scale. Last year and going forward, students take this on a computer. So the listening, speaking, and reading are all done on a computer with headsets and a microphone. The writing portion is still scored holistically by teachers. So that was a shift from the past, where teachers were, collecting data all year and kind of, saying, I believe the student is an advanced or an intermediate in speaking. Now a computer rates them.
So you will have data points by March or April then?
We
that you'd be
usually
able
get
to?
TELPAS back in the summer data.
Not till summer?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thanks.
And so, one of the ways that so looking at, I don't know, it's page 190, right? So I guess it's the one, couple slides back, right? So looking at the first grade population here for us, like at those 4 schools, do you have any idea like what percentage of the first grade population is at those 4 schools, right? Or like I'm trying to figure out how do we know if we're successful, right? So should we be able to see this first grade number and the second grade number for the district? Should we see those go up next year, right? Are there enough kids in the population at those 4 schools to bump those numbers up?
Or in the EL progress measure.
Right.
I'm not quite sure how to answer that, Mr. Floor.
Yeah, I mean, I realize I'm kind of throwing it out there. I didn't think about it when I was going through the packet earlier, but.
No, I'm trying to think. You're talking about.
Like roll back 2 slides real quick.
Right. So you're wanting
one more.
to know if our numbers of students
Yeah, like the 44% and the 28%, right? So,
right.
So should we see those numbers go up, you think, next year, right, because of this program in those 4 schools, are there enough kids in those schools to impact that number?
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So at the earlier grades, so since we're measuring listening, speaking, reading, and writing, at the first, second grade level, all kids are like acquiring language at these huge rates and like making a lot of progress. Just think about your kid when they were kindergartner to a second grade, how much more language they use. So, you know, there's a lot of progress made at those years, and you see it kind of tapers off, you know, because at some point kids become, you know, advanced and then they kind of cap out. Our kiddos that are in high school right now, we have a lot of long-term EL students at Belton High School because they grew up in our transitional early exit program, which the research tells us it's not as effective as dual language programs. So the goal is to get that progress. Each student needs to make one proficiency level higher. So if they were a beginner last year as a first grader, then as a second grader, they need to go up a level to an intermediate, and then to an advanced, and then an advanced high. So we need to make one level of progress each year. Hope that answered you. If not, I'll study a little more.
I think where you'll see a gain is not so much in your TOLPAS, but really in your STAR assessment. And that's going to take a while because we're not implementing at 3rd grade, but these students, we're preparing them to be able to take a STAR assessment in 3rd grade in Spanish. And that's one thing that's important, that right now many of them take that in English. And you have a lot of students that really kind of fall in this no language proficiency because we're teaching them English as fast as we can, but at home it's really supported strongly by Spanish. And so we studied it for a year, and I'm going to give some accolades to Lauren for leading that because we've known it's an issue that we needed to address, and she really pulled in some experts through Dr. Monica Lara, through Khalidad. We went to some state training with what's working for ELs and really tried to figure out what are we not doing that we need to do, and that we really landed kind of on this dual language one way. But it's going to take a while. We can get data points all along the way, but what we're really looking at is that 3rd grade STAR. And you want to have kids in 3rd grade bilingual for 2 more years. But you don't want to start it full blown. Just everybody in, let's do a bilingual program K-5. You really do need, and that's what the experts stress to us, is you need to gradually move it in so that we can get it right. Our teachers are thrilled. Our bilingual teachers, so I've worked with them for a couple years. Lauren's worked with them. They were frustrated as well, and they feel like this is a move in the right direction. And they're native speakers as well, and so they see the value in it.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you, ladies. That was a wonderful update. We're doing some amazing things in that program.
35
And we
languages in
are
Belton
going to,
ISD.
all right. I would like to take a tour of that sometime. So as Dr. Battershell suggested, if there are other board members who would like to tour the program, then get back with her. I would definitely like to take a tour and see what that's like up close. Next item on our agenda is issues, concerns for future agenda or administrative reports. Does the board have anything that they would like to add it for future agenda items? No? I want to also just kind of talk about some upcoming events. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no,
Kristen.
I just had a schedule update, right? So the North Belton transfer meetings, or the middle school transfer meetings, right? I'm almost 100% certain I can't make Monday, but I might be able to make Tuesday. So we'll see what we can do. Yeah. Okay.
Just want to point out some things about some upcoming events. October being National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we're going to think pink and pink out the field on Friday night when we play Ellison at 7:30 at Tiger Field. Also, just a reminder that the Policy Committee meeting is in the Superintendent's Conference Room at 5 on Monday, November the 4th. And then we have a tour scheduled for Lake Belton High School at 3:30. Make sure you wear your closed-toe shoes. And we have a special meeting with Thompson and Horton to talk about superintendent search. That's at 5 o'clock. And then the other thing I would point out is our next regular board meeting would be Monday, November the 18th here at the PVAC. Nothing further. We stand adjourned.